Councillors,
Lee.
go. I'll call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to our council meeting on the 16th of August. I'll do the point one is introduction. In the event of an emergency, the building may be evacuated. You'll be required to vacate the building by the rear entrance and gather at the breezeway between the library and the art gallery buildings. This is council's designated emergency muster point. Under no circumstances is anyone permitted to re-enter the building until all the clear has been given and the area deemed safe by authorised personnel. In the event of an evacuation, a member of council staff will assist any member of the public with a disability to vacate the building. Item 1.1, apologies for absence. None?
Mr Mayor, we have none, although we do have Councillor Kinghorn on screen.
I'll need a mover. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Whitten. All in favour? Carried. I'll move on to item 1.2. This council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to be live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that if and when you speak at this council meeting, that you ensure you are respectful to others and use appropriate language at all times. Orange City Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this meeting. A recording of this council meeting will be made for administration purposes. I'll move on to item 1.3, which is acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I would also like to pay respect to the elders both past and present of the Wiradjuri Nation and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present. Item 1.4, declaration of interest. Has any councillors got any declaration of interest? No?
Rare night.
There being no speakers, I just want to hand on to the CEO who would like to make an introduction. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I would like to introduce you all to our new Chief Financial Officer, who's here with us tonight, Veronica Webb. Veronica comes to us, last job was actually at Cabonne Council. Apologies there. Veronica comes with significant experience in clearly following others. Veronica comes with significant local government experience, and I must say it's a great personal relief to have a CFO on board again. Obviously, our thanks go to Mr McDonald for his efforts over the last few months. And Veronica, welcome, and we all look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thank you. There being no mayoral minutes, I'll move on to items 3, which is confirmation of the ordinary council meeting held on the 2nd of August August 2022.
Move the minutes, Mr Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Whitten, seconded by Councillor Greenhalgh. Any speakers? There being no speakers, I'll move. All those in favour? Against? Carried. No notices of motion or rescission motions. I'll move on to item 5, which is general reports, and 5.1, which is recommendations and resolutions from the policy committees on page 17. I have a mover. Moved by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Mallard. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've just got a couple of questions. The first one is just to get a little bit more clarification on the Burgate Road situation of where we're up to with that, as far as date starting and date finishing and the actual cost of that. I think that's going to be very important when we come to doing other major projects as far as the Southern Feeder goes, because I think we need, we go down and do seek money, we need concept plans, concept designs and quantitative surveyors reports, so we need to be fairly spot on because we can see what's happened with the other major projects we've got going with the Conservatorium, Planetarium, and God knows what could happen with the sports precinct. But that's my question with that one there. And I'll say the next question too, because the next one can get up. Mr Hodges can question this one. As regards to what's actually happening with Summer Street with the awnings up there, because they've been there, they're heading towards 2 years, and they're an absolute eyesore for the city and people are running into them.
Are you referring to the burning?
Where the fire was?
The fire awnings?
Yes, yeah. He knows where it is.
Very good. Thank you for your question. As far as an update for Cleargate Road, Council received a report to the last meeting explaining that we were recommending and resolved to not accept any tenders and go out and procure the pipes ourselves and then resubmit a revised scope for tender. So pipes have, the RFQ for the pipes closes this week, and we expect to make an order on those next week. The scope is being rewritten and will go out to tender by October. Hopefully sometime towards the end of September, but certainly by the 1st of October. And then closing and an award in that early December period, which is also, as we discussed at the last council meeting, that's also the procurement period for the pipes, for the manufacture of those pipes. So that should line up well, and there shouldn't be any delay in actually getting a contractor started on that project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hodges.
Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question. The councillors bring up to speed. Summer Street, where Cafe Latte is, when the fire was there a couple of years ago, probably. So 3 of the nearby shops rather, are the subject of development applications. That most recent one was modified about 2 weeks ago for repairs to the both the awnings and also internally to those. The main cafe itself, that was where the principal damage was done by the fire, is a subject of an emergency order that we issued back after the fire, and they've just started with that of the burnout material further, and we'll be installing making the structural repairs that's required for both the awning and inside that building. All going to happen pretty soon. The 3 shops to the west will be putting up their own hoarding for a little bit, just to whilst they do the repairs to their own awnings. So they'll make separate awnings so they don't rely. At the moment, it's one big one, but it's all going to change soon.
We have a time frame?
The structural works are commencing now, so I'm hoping for the cafe that'll be fairly quick. But it does rely on replacement of floors and roof and structural frames through the buildings. So it could take a little bit, but
Work in progress. Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Last council meeting, on the way home, there was a car burnt out at Gosling Reservoir. I'm just wondering, is it our responsibility to move it? Because it's now been rolled over onto its side, near the family area, and young children near it, it's going to roll over on top of them.
we'll take that on notice, Mr. Mayor.
Any other speakers? There being no other speakers, I'll put the recommendation. All in favour? Against? Carried. I'll move on to item 5.2, which is the Business Enterprise Centre on page 33.
The recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Whitten, second by Councillor Evans. Any speakers?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering if we could get any background on why these changes are occurring. I've had a little bit of experience with Business HQ, but I thought it just might be useful for everyone to get a quick briefing on why these changes are occurring to the organisation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll have a stab. I was afraid someone might ask this question and how I would answer it. I think, let's just say the management of Biz HQ changed a year or so ago, and the organisation looked at the core business that they do, and it was agreed amongst all parties that it really wasn't a council thing. It was agreed amongst the GMs of councils involved that, there were risks. It wasn't really control of council. So it was agreed that we would change the constitution. We'd remove all councils as sort of primary members, still be involved, but just take us out of the governance of it. So working with the board members and myself, Councillor Power, Councillor Miletto, we've effectively exited gracefully, but we'll still maintain a sort of secondary membership grade. And on they go. They've got their new governance structure. They've got great directors. That's the basic background.
And we intend to take up that general membership, I imagine.
I think so. I think it's in our interest just to keep a finger on the pulse.
There being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. Item 5.3 is proposed recycling gate fee increase to new Visy supply agreement on page 37.
I'll move
by-
the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Mallard, seconded by Councillor Power. Any speakers?
Couple of questions. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I'll see. You can be next, Councillor Kinghorn. Councillor Kinghorn, you've got the floor now.
Okay, all right. Thank you. A couple of questions. I was just interested, is it the same as what we're doing now other than the price? And page 52, where they're talking about over compaction, I'm just interested in how we've previously gone with the targets that they set.
Thank you. Yes, it is the same as what we're currently doing. It's just a change in the gate fee price, and we've generally met all targets required of us.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the director. A few dollars increase, but what tonnage do we normally do, Mr. Greenham? What would the increase be impacted onto the ratepayers or the?
I'll have to take that on notice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just speaking motion, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we made a decision to accept the $2 increase, but really sure of what that impact will be from a budgeting point of view.
Well, I think it's a fair comment. Mr. Greenham doesn't know the answer tonight. I think it'll come out of the waste fund, so to be fair, it'll be a straight pass-through.
It'll be a straight pass-through through.
I did speak to Mr. Davis and ask what the total quantum was a couple of days ago out of interest, and I think he did tell me it was 6,000 a year in total.
1,000
That's
tonne.
your question. The total increase.
And I suppose the other question is that we're paying for the service, also given up out of the return on the happening. It's in it for us.
It, as far as what's in it for us, it continues our diversion from landfill for that waste stream. We don't have a viable economic use for those mixed recyclables at this point in time, and Visy provides that service.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. I'll move on to item 5.4, which is motions from the Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference.
One by one.
Over moved by Councillor Duffy there, second by Councillor Mallard, that they're separated. All in favour? Against? Carried. So, first of all, let me get to where I'm supposed to. Number one, which is the motion from Councillor McDonald. Donald will be moving it. Over seconder. Seconded by Councillor Mallard. Are there any speakers?
I suppose I'll just sort of give a quick run over it. The main idea of this is another tool to help tackle affordability and costs of living. Houses that are designed better in terms of energy efficiency are cheaper to heat, cheaper to cool, which we all know is costs that's increasing with housing. So, right.
There being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. Motion number 2 from Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first of all want to thank the staff for getting this in here, although it's not the resolution that I want to move because my wife only come out of hospital today and I've sort of been doing it a little bit tough at home too, to have to do the housework.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Duffy. I'll second it for discussion.
But I want to read the resolution to you. It changes.
Okay.
Yeah, it changes. that the Local Government New South Wales Conference call upon the state government to release necessary percentage of land under its control for social and affordable housing. Resolution.
That's the new
Covers the
resolution.
state of New South Wales.
Motion.
You'll second that, Councillor Whitten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, no matter where you go and no matter what we hear, is a crisis within social and affordable housing. But we must recognise that it is a state government issue. Sure, we facilitate it like we did with domestic violence and those type of things there. But it is a state government issue. And former Councillor Turner spoke numerous times about how the responsibility of certain things were the state government. But in saying that, there are wonderful service providers that we have in this region. We have Housing Plus, which is an independent body as well. But we also have Ash Group Holdings, which is also corporate which operates around Moree in the western areas as well. And I can't speak for other LGAs, but I'd imagine this wouldn't be the only one that's on show or the only comment that's going to be there. But just in our area, and just to quote, we have 700 plus vacant blocks out there between Shirley and the back of these TAFE colleges there, which the state government own and have been rezoned probably for well over a decade. And they're just sitting there. We also have the Bloomfield precinct, which says empty houses out there. We have the nursing home up here. And we also have the CSU out there, which is a massive amount of land, which is not an agricultural anymore. It's a centre of excellence for health or support health issues. So there is plenty of land around to do that with it. And I would imagine that same situation goes right across New South Wales in various different, especially in regional areas, whatever the case. But those two organisations that I mentioned are firstly regional, right across the area back west of the mountains. I can't speak about the city counterparts. I don't know what their issues are there, but I do know that no matter whatever, turn a radio on or a television on, and we're always talking about the shortage and the crisis of what's actually happening with social and affordable housing. And this is a step forward, and I think we should need to go to this conference and make it quite clear that the state government have to deliver. And I don't care which one it is. We've got an election coming up in February or March, whatever it is, but we need to let them both know that we want something to happen. Council, probably along with a lot of others, will want something to happen. And I'd imagine this won't be the first one that pops up with that.
No other speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against?
Is that an against?
Was that for Councillor Kinghorn? Yep, sorry. That's gone. Number 3, which is Councillor Mallard, the cat can...
Second of that one, Mr Mayor.
Can I just finish reading it, please, Councillor Duffy? Cat containment amendments to the Companion Animals Act. It's obviously moved by Councillor Mallard and seconded by very quick Councillor Duffy. Councillor Mallard, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. If I can just speak briefly. Yeah, look, this is something that a number of other states and territories have been moving on. The ACT has continued rolling out its cat containment requirements. I think it's really important in terms of the well-being of the cats. They're safer being kept at home or in an enclosure. It's better in terms of not only cat owners not having to face the risk of their cat being injured or killed, but for other residents as well. I mean, I've had the experience of coming out into my driveway and finding that there's a cat's been hit on the busy street out the front of my place, and I've had to call the rangers about it. So it's good for those reasons. It's also good in terms of protecting native wildlife.
$20.
That last bit again.
40.
Yep. So, moment under the New South Wales legislation, there's basically very limited capacity to do anything to prevent free roaming cats. You can declare some protected areas and you can take action on nuisance cats. So this is just saying that we need to have the opportunity to then be able to look at what we could introduce, and education being a key part of it as well, like basically letting people know about how it's much more responsible and better in many ways to have cats kept at home. Thanks.
Councillor Duffy, you're on your feet. I don't want you to just have to sit down and stand up. And sit down.
I never thought I'd sit in here and second a motion put up by the Greens. I thought it was a bit. I even wore my National Party tie here for you, Councillor. But Look, 4
Seeing
billion,
with them all the time.
0.4 billion birds a year, feral cats in the kill across the world. In Australia, 1 million a day. 1 million a day cats. And I don't think the resolution goes a bit hard enough, because they should. A lot of them that are outside the home should be hit with a boron or hummingbird, as far as I'm concerned, because I mean they get out there and kill these birds. Magpies, galahs, mountain larries, superb parrots, you name them, they come and they drag them in. I encourage every farmer, if he goes out one night and sees them, just do the right
Duffy,
thing.
be careful.
Well, we're still allowed to shoot vermin.
Thanks.
And but I just want you to know that 1 million birds a day in Australia. That's a lot of birds in a day, and they are natives. These cats aren't native that get out there. I mean, I remember as a kid, rabbits, about 10 or 12 years, and you get a cat in there to nearly kill you to get the thing out of there. But I'm not saying do that to the cats, but what I'm saying is we need to do something about them to get rid of them, because they're feral, they're in the mountain up there, they're out of Kinmouth Forest. You drive around Orange at night, you see them ducking down into drains and all those type of places. And you can rest assured, there are a lot of people in Orange that have actual birds, and Councillor Grillis, former Councillor Grillis, has a massive big tree up the back of his place where he puts bird seed out, and the cockatoos and all come there. People up in Lone Pine Avenue do the same type of thing up there, and they are often complaining about cats coming in and getting rid of them. And I think I've spoken to the director a number of times about certain houses up there that got cats that are out running around. So I encourage this one here, and I've always loved the thought of Harry Butler. Harry Butler was an environmentalist, wasn't he? He was a great environmentalist, the few environmentalists that I thought. And I remember seeing that, remember that cartoon in the Daily Telegraph? He lifted up this rock and he saw the cat under it and he went, "What?" And he said, "A flat."
Thanks, Councillor. I think I know where you're going with that.
You know, that's where feral cats should be.
Councillor Duffy. Councillor Miletto?
Supporting the motion, Councillor Duffy?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
What he said
Just
about
checking.
I don't know if you can follow that act, but anyway.
Any more Harry Butler comments? Councillor Miletto?
I'm confused now whether this motion relates to domestic or feral cats. Both? Okay. I support the recommendation in principle. My concerns are in regards to the capacity of elderly people to pay. They need to contain their beloved kittens or cats. So there is no study or anything like that, or no detail with regards to how people who are struggling, increasing inflation, interest rates like that, those type of things, how would these people who are, in some cases, that's the only companionship they have, they assume that and would hope that the majority of people would do the right thing and contain their cats where possible, but that's not always the case. But when we put regulations on people to enclose the cats in an outdoor setting, that will obviously come at a cost. There are people in our community who are struggling to survive, to heat their own homes, to buy food. Cat is their only company in some situations. I'm just wondering what their capacity would be to have that cat encaged in their own yard, as this motion suggests. That is my only concern with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Miletto. Councillor Kinghorn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment, this motion is actually just to get the state government to give councils the power to do this. So it's not actually about how it would be done if we did adopt it. So I'm supporting the motion. In Canberra, where this has been done, they've done it in a staged capacity, so that people who already had cats that were outside, it wasn't enforced with them. So there are issues with people with allergies and that sort of thing as well, and that was taken into account when it was actually adopted. But because this motion is just to get the government to give us the opportunity to do that locally, then it's probably not such an issue at this stage.
Thanks, Councillor Kinghorn. Councillor Floyd.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be voting in favour of this proposal tonight. Cats in Australia are directly responsible for approximately 2/3 of the extinction rate of small mammals since European settlement, and this rate could be higher with native bird species. We currently have estimated between 1.5 and 5.5 million feral cats roaming the country, and approximately 3.5 million pet cats. So I believe that legislation must be enabled for the containment and restrictive movement to keep cats away from our native fauna. And I applaud Councillor Mallard for this proposed amendment to the Companion Animal Act.
There being no other spell, I'll just make a quick comment. I know that we won't be the only council that are bringing something about cats to the local government conference. I heard on the ABC the other morning a councillor in the Hills district or somewhere talking about the same problem. I've just got a question. Do they microchip cats?
Mr. Hodges?
They do.
Yes.
Mayor, I'll just get my steps up. I thought the chairman might have answered it. Yes, you can.
Have a program going with the sexing and all that sort of thing?
Yes, and part of that desexing program is microchipping it as well.
And the rangers, if they find a cat and they can contain the cat, can they bring it back and return it to its owner?
And that's certainly the benefit of getting the chips, microchips put into the cat or dog. As soon as we catch them, we always scan them. Prefer to take them straight back home instead of over to the pound. Certainly encourage people to do that.
Mr. Mayor, just a question to the director. So it's not mandatory like dogs, it's only an optional, is it? Or chipping, I mean.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm just thinking, trying to think back of the years because I get confused with proposals for legislation amendments. They certainly brought in, back in the early 2000s, there was a proposed cat curfew with the green paper that came out for the Companion Animals Act, but didn't come in. I think for the cats, they have to be identified, which is the collar and the tag. And I think after a certain date, there was a requirement to have them. But I can confirm that take that on notice and just shoot you out a note.
Okay.
Pressing.
Just as a general comment, Mr. Mayor.
Speaking, you've already spoken for the motion.
Point of clarification. In the mover of the motion, add that to his thing that they can band on it when he gets down to the conference. About having.
Is that a question?
Sounds like one.
It does sound like one to me, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Mallard, would you care to add anything to your motion about microchipping?
I've just done a quick bit of searching and I believe I've confirmed that all cats and dogs must be microchipped by 12.
Thank you. They don't need it. Okay, well, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. I'll move on to motion 4, which is from Councillor Mallard. Am I on the right one? Yes, I am. About the regulated phase out of new petrol and diesel vehicles. I've got a mover and Councillor Mallard. Seconder? Councillor McDonald? Councillor Mallard?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me.
Is about an issue that's really important and it's also been quite prominent in the media recently. I've heard more on it this week, and one of the key things is the motor industry itself is asking for this sort of regulation. And in fact, when we were at the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly in June, those of us who went to the climate change session heard from someone at Hyundai Australia talking about the fact that this is what they need governments to do, to say we're regulating emission standards and we're going to be tightening them down. And because what's happening as a result of Australia not having that, about 80% of the global market for cars does have fuel efficiency standards covering it for the global light vehicle market. All of the supply of electric vehicles going to be prioritised to go to those markets where the manufacturers have to meet those standards. We're going to be facing a situation where, well, we already are, that electric vehicles are in very short supply. There are massively long waiting lists. I know our council, when they purchased the vehicle for the pound, were very lucky that there was one of the Renault models that they were looking at was available and they were able to get it. Otherwise, it was looking at a 6 to 12 month wait, which is pretty much the standard for getting this sort of vehicle. So it's a transition that's really important for climate action. I don't know that a lot of people in the community realise just how fast this is going to move. If you look around, there's experts saying that in about 5 years' time, by 2026, 2027, electric vehicles are going to have both range parity and price parity with petrol and diesel vehicles. That the big manufacturers now are ramping up their mass production of electric cars, and the economies of scale mean they're going to get cheap. Batteries are getting cheaper. So it's all happening. But for us to make that transition, needs this sort of regulation brought in. And as I've noted, the UK, which is the major market where right-hand drive electric vehicles are going to go at the moment, they're looking at a phase out by 2030. And that's the final thing I wanted to say on it, is that obviously this is about new vehicles. The ACT is already moving on this sort of thing. So obviously the key thing to recognise, the lifespan of cars means that even if you're talking about trying to reach net zero emissions by 2050, which is an inadequate target for limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees, but even if that's your target, you need to have the phase out early enough, because you're still going to have so many petrol and diesel cars on the road, and they out their lifespan, which is an average of 10 years. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mallard. Any other speakers?
Just my comment about it.
Are you speaking against the motion, Councillor?
Well, I'm speaking probably 50. There we go. My question comes down to the actual replacement of batteries, and how do we dispose of these batteries and all these type of things there. Back on the workforce. They're my questions. I have concerns about those. But I haven't seen any information as regards to what is that going to do, and how does it affect the remote area? Have long travel and all those type of things there. So I'm a little bit concerned about it, but I have no doubt there's going to be plenty of other resolutions at the conference to talk about those type of things, and our Merc is going to go down that pathway of looking at all those things as well. So, as I said, I'm probably happy to support
Councillor Greenhalgh.
And my point is probably I'm 50-50 as well. Like, I totally understand, and I believe we should be going that way. But from listening to some information, this just only, I think it was yesterday, for things like towing capacity to tow recreational boats and things like that, obviously at the moment that's really shortening up the distance that you can travel because it's using more power and stuff. So I think a lot more research and stuff needs to be done in that. And I agree, everyone will probably be putting motions forward, but I think it comes around our infrastructure network as well for the trucks and so forth on the road, and how we're going to be managing those sorts of things. I don't think it should just come down to us as private people as such. Like, we should be strongly encouraging businesses and stuff to move that way as well.
Councillor Peterson.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment of the motion. I think the date of a ban on vehicles, new vehicles being sold in 7.5 years, that take more thought to know if that's going to work. Sentiment's fine. I appreciate that, because it's going to go to other conference and other levels of government to decide. They'll have to decide about the dates and stuff at that time.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm speaking for the motion, obviously. I just wanted to sort of make a comment that this is not necessarily about transitioning straight to EVs. The motion itself is about regulating CO2 emissions. One of the things that Councillor Mallard mentioned, the Hyundai fellow at the NGA back in June, and he said that the way the industry was really going was that it was going to be hydrogen for the larger vehicles that needed the greater haulage and power for that sort of side of things, and it was going to be more EV for the smaller vehicles. The other thing is that if we don't put a limit on the emissions that new vehicles generate, Australia is going to become the dumping ground of the dirty vehicles from overseas, essentially. And there's a lot of reports are coming through saying that that's what's going to happen. So I don't want other people's dirty crap in my backyard, so I support this mission.
Councillor Whitten.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I agree with the sentiments of the motion. I believe, like with every technology, this debate will be taken out of our hands. The vendors who build the cars will just say, right, we're only going to build electronic vehicles. We won't. That's what they'll do, right? What demand demands is. And it depends if the fuel refinery countries of the world put pressure on them not to. the debate will be basically taken out of our hands. They'll just build vehicles that are electric only.
Councillor Floyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just taking on what everyone's saying, I can understand where people are coming from. However, I'll be voting against this proposal tonight. Australia being such a vast country that has very little scope for vehicles that are limited to about a 500 kilometre range before needing to be recharged. I am, however, not against these vehicles being utilised in areas like major cities or wherever where distance is not as crucial for day-to-day business and travelling, things like that. I believe that the introduction of a ban on new petrol and diesel-fuelled vehicles from 2030 is both antisocial and growth restrictive. European countries can do what they like. When they take a 700-kilometre trip, it takes them through at least 5 different countries. In Australia, you don't leave the same state that you're in. Not to mention the delays in your trip waiting for a car to recharge. With Australia only contributing 1.4% of total global emissions and being the size that it is, the need to remove fuel fossil vehicles and replace them with battery power, I believe, is totally unacceptable to the majority.
Thank you. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to speak against this. I think that market forces will ensure that this sort of thing happens anyway, and I would happily support it if range parity and price parity had been achieved. But until they have, I don't think it's appropriate for us to force that on people.
Any other speakers? Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, if we look at phasing out the vehicles by 2030, do we have the capacity as far as EV power sources? Do we have enough, or can we estimate how many we're going to need in Orange? Chargers, I should say.
Through Mr. Chair, I don't think we've got anyone qualified in the room to answer that question.
Probably an important point that we do know the answer if we're talking about moving a motion here to phase out all the vehicles. But yeah, do we have the infrastructure in place? Do we know what that looks like? Do we know how much it's going to cost? I think they're pretty important questions, because if it's up to the ratepayer to pay for these things, I think we've got a responsibility to show some leadership and do that. I would request that this one be deferred and for further information and not go to not be put up. So I'll be speaking against it at this point in time.
Okay.
Suppose, Mr. Mayor, just comment. It's got to get through the.
Got to go local government, New South Wales first.
It may not even get a Guernsey.
Speaking against.
I just sort of wanted to, through you, respond to Councillor Miletto's comment about.
Okay.
Respond, I don't.
There was a question in this one.
Okay.
Can I just speak?
You can close the debate.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks everyone for your comments. And to start with Councillor Kinghorn's comment about market forces, yes, ultimately the market is moving us towards climate action in a whole bunch of areas, but the trajectory matters, and it matters a hell of a lot. We need to be putting ourselves on a path to phase out fossil fuels completely. Technology is developing very quickly, as I said.
Point of order. Is this about electronic vehicles or phasing out fossil fuels? Is this a council matter or is it a Greens matter?
I'll take the point. Keep going, Councillor Mallard, please. Can we just stick to the motion, please?
Well, petrol and diesel being fossil fuels, I think phasing out petrol and diesel vehicles is part of the move away from fossil fuels and part of climate action. And that's not a Greens issue. That's really a global responsibility issue, and we've got intergenerational equity responsibilities as councillors. So I do see this as being something that we do need to be moving on. A lot of the questions about how it would happen and those sorts of things, the transition needs to be planned. That's in looking at preparing this motion. I was able to find the UK government have done the planning work. They've got plans for how they're implementing the progression towards phasing out petrol and diesel cars by 2030. What this motion is doing is saying our state or federal governments should be doing the same thing. Thanks.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour, raise your hands. Against?
Against? Peterson 6, yeah.
Yep.
What was the result?
7-5 against the motion.
The next one is
I
the...
might call a division. We haven't had a division forever.
Oh, do we have to?
Nah, I was just joking.
We'll move on to item number 5, which is the reducing of impacts of wood heaters. Councillor Mallard, moving that. Seconder? I don't have a seconder, so...
I'll second.
Councillor
Who's seconding it? Councillor McDonald or Councillor
We'll fight over it. I'll do it.
McDonald? Councillor Mallard.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, this one, wood heater smoke is a significant issue in terms of pollution and the impact on public health. I'm signed up to get the text alerts from the EPA. The air quality monitor that was installed a few years ago up on Hill Street monitors the air in Orange, and I looked back through my phone earlier today and found we've had 11 alerts for poor quality based on PM 2.5, which is the fine particles that wood heaters are responsible for in Orange this year, and all of them this year are between June and August. So it's all winter wood fires burning are the source of it. It is an important issue, and I know it's one I've heard from members of the community about. And in fact, Kevin Parton, who's an adjunct professor now at Charles Sturt Uni, he did some research back in 2007 with some colleagues looking at Armidale and looking at data from GP visits up there, and they estimated that 38% of all the total respiratory visits to GP surgeries were due to air pollution, particulate air pollution, and they estimated the daily economic cost to the city of Armidale was $1,666. So it's an issue. We're in a similar situation to Armidale. We're a regional centre. We've got a lot of older places that probably have wood heaters that might not have been looked after that much or that might have issues. This motion, I've included some supporting information there, proposing a policy approach where there is some more regulation, including resourcing to support local governments to address it, but also lobbying for the state government to introduce incentive schemes to allow people to replace their wood heaters with lower pollution and lower emissions alternatives. Thanks.
Councillor Whitten.
I'll let Councillor Mileto speak first. He had his hand up before I was going to stand.
Thank you, and I thank the councillor for the motion. I support it in principle, but I have some concerns about phasing it out. The reason I say that is there are people within our community who cannot afford electricity and those increasing electricity prices. And some ways this is their only means of keeping warm in what is generally a bitter cold winter in Orange. Another issue which I have, which would make Orange City Council look like hypocrites, when we put $10,000 towards a wood bank to support this, to support people in need who cannot afford electricity, want to keep warm like everybody else. So we have a wood bank which has increased since I've been on council every year to assist those people who are really struggling. And there are people out there who are struggling. That's where I see this motion conflicts with what we're already doing. I'm not saying it can't be done. When a time, I think we need to look at other measures on how we can do that. But by introducing a wood bank scheme, allowing people to utilise who can't afford to buy their own wood and to keep warm during wintertime, I see this as being in conflict with it. So I can't support it at this point in time, sorry.
Councillor Mileto. Councillor Whitten.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I'm speaking against the motion. Look, I don't think it's our job to dictate to people about what type of heating they have in their home. Wood fires have been around for 10,000 years. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't be on this planet to keep warm. So I'll probably get to declare an interest because I got one. I've got reverse cycle air conditioning as a heater as well, but there is nothing like living in Orange and in wintertime sitting in front of a wood fire, relaxing and being warm. Now, I respect the value that there are some people who suffer from allergies from the smoke. We live in a country where we have bushfires. This summer we're going to be burning off to save against bushfires. What are we going to do in springtime? We're going to start chopping down trees because people are allergic to the blooms and the pollen. Like, we've got to get a bit realistic here. We can't dictate people's lives. That's not our job. Our job is to maintain the city and look after roads, footpaths, and give back to the community some amenities, not to say to them that they can't have the particular appliances in their home so they can keep warm, especially in Orange. And Councillor Mileto said it, that there are many, many people in our community, if it wasn't for wood fires, they would be freezing because they can't afford electricity, they can't afford gas. So how are we going to get around that issue? We're starting to tread into a couple of policies here that have nothing to do with local government, not us anyway. They're state and federal issues, and certainly I believe I'll be voting against this one for sure.
Councillor Floyd.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be voting against this proposal tonight as well. While I certainly agree that that fires do add a small percentage to air pollution, there are other steps that can be taken to reduce the effects of this pollution. For example, using well-seasoned wood, not using stained or treated wood, using small blocks at a time, and purchasing of modern and fit-for-purpose wood heaters would help in the reduction of this problem. The need to replace wood fires with low CO2 emitting alternatives is totally unnecessary, especially when many families cannot afford proper gas or electric heating in their homes. Wood offers an affordable alternative, not to mention the many positive aspects of a wood fire, mainly the intensity and purity of the heat, the natural ambience of a wood fire, and the many physical, social, environmental and economic benefits associated with the wood collection. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Greenhouse was first. Councillor Duffy.
I totally agree with what Councillor Floyd said. I think, we live in the country. We've just had a winter fire festival. There's nothing better in winter than getting around socially with your mates, for all generations, and having a wood fire on a property. It's keeping young kids off the street. It's keeping them safe. It's keeping them with family, and it's keeping them warm. But for goodness sake, we have bushfires. Let's get real about it. What were those hazards every day when we were in bushfires in 2020? It's a natural thing. We're not going to be able to stop it. And I think to police people in our community, how they need to heat their homes is absolutely ridiculous.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can only do one tonight, Councillor Mallard. I'm going to speak against this. Councillor Greenhouse was right when she said you only got to go back a couple of years when the smoke was around place for weeks and weeks on end. I can tell you from about 1960 on, when I come over the hill into Orange, and Orange only had a population of about 18,000 people, there was huge smoke across the city during the winter. Come over the hill now and the population have doubled and well and truly doubled. There's not much smoke at all when you come over the hill. So it's not that big a problem in the issue of Orange. But what I have a big problem with is that I have a wood fire as well, and there's nothing better than sitting down outside having a great northern and enjoying myself and enjoying the pleasures of life, which Councillor Floyd said. But I also want to go back to our wood bank, which was mentioned by other councillors. And I can tell you, up in Winter Street up there, aptly named, wasn't it? I ran to come across a couple that had, in the middle of winter during an election campaign, when our friend Mr. what's his name with the coal mines down in the Hunter Valley, saying they weren't going to make $100 million out of the coal deal, they're only going to make 70. Come on, they couldn't afford the heater to go on electricity in their own home. They had blankets over themselves and all those type of things in the middle of winter. Now that is what we're talking about, and electricity prices are about to double. They're going to go through the roof. So we're going to try and stop people from having the general comfort of everyday life, which we've had for tens of thousands of years, as Councillor Whitten has said. I just think it's not. I just think it's just, to me, just wrong.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also will be speaking against this. Part two, absolutely. If you can have incentive schemes to replace things for people who want to do that, I've got no issues with that at all. But I think generally it should be done by education. A lot of people who do have wood heaters don't run them in the most efficient way, and that does increase the problematic emissions. So I think it can be done a different way. So I won't be supporting it.
Councillor McDonald, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm speaking in favour of it. Like, this isn't actually, from what I understand, this isn't actually about saying no to wood burning, wood heaters. It's about air quality and the impact that wood heater smoke has on the air quality. Like, I'm a big fan of wood heaters. I agree. Can't argue the ambience that they provide. But this is more about the air quality thing. And we reference bushfires. We had smoke everywhere. If you actually looked at the air quality indicators on there, it was as red as it could possibly be. It was incredibly dangerous. So it's just saying that we get bushfires and, you know, it's just part of the natural thing, I don't think is something we can just go, oh, well, that's just how it is, let's suck it up. This is also about, I see that in the first part of it, where we've got resourcing to support local governments address the issue, I see education as falling under that. It's not necessarily about, you know, going house to house and saying, all right, you've got a wood heater, out with it, make you put something else in. I would see education as coming in under that. And I think that number two, as Councillor Kinghorn mentioned, the incentive schemes are really important too. I take the point about the wood bank. However, these sorts of things need multi-pronged approaches. So for those people who aren't able to change out, aren't able to take up incentive schemes, that's absolutely where the wood bank could help. I think it's more about just reducing the impacts of the smoke. And from a health perspective, if COVID and everything has taught us nothing, the quality of our air is really, really important. And if there's something where we can help whatever households are interested in changing, then I think it's a great idea.
Councillor Peterson.
A recent bit of research on the news this morning was talking about how the vast majority of rental accommodation in Australia doesn't meet the WHO target of an 18-degree temperature. I imagine in Orange that would be a fraction of houses that would normally do that. I suspect in a future motion, maybe for a different conference, looking at number two, but then also maybe having some support for people that struggle to get their houses might be a more palatable approach than a regulation or a ban.
Councillor Evans.
Mr. Mayor, what Councillor McDonald's saying, there's nowhere in this motion that says, sorry, you can't have a wood heater, because I'm not walking over to my in-law's house and telling them, sorry, you can't have one. That'll go down like a lead balloon. What it is about, like Councillor McDonald's made the point, is it's about education and incentive schemes. And that's something I agree with. Like, I remember the bushfires in 2019. It wasn't very pleasant at all. If we can educate people, incentivise them to consider a different option of heating, then I'm for it.
Councillor Mallard, do you want to close the debate?
Yes,
please?
thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and thanks everyone for your comments. But yeah, I do, as Councillor McDonald and Councillor Evans have just said, I think a lot of the arguments again have been made against things that aren't actually in the motion. Nothing in there is talking about a ban on or even a phase out of wood heating. It is talking about giving people incentives to replace them, and they can choose whether or not to take those. But if people haven't had a chance to look, I'd encourage you to have a look at the second link in the background there at some point to understand things a bit better. It's about tightening standards up. It's about having some better mechanisms for being able to identify problematic issues with people's wood heaters and to get action on it. But absolutely, education's one of the key things. We can't enforce our way through everything. But I think this was really a motion intended to say let's try to recognise the health impacts and nudge people in the direction to reduce those impacts, but it's not about saying that we can never light a fire again.
Okay, there being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? The motion is defeated. I'll move on to item 5.5, which is
Mr. Chairman.
Statement of Investments. Be actually moved by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Floyd. Any speakers? Being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. Item 5.6, which is the CW-CGO electricity contract.
It would be noted.
Recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Whitten, seconded by Councillor Mallard. Any speakers? Councillor Whitten.
Great initiative. Congratulations to everyone involved, the CEO. Mr. CEO,
Sure.
why didn't we offer this to the entire community of Orange?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a very interesting question. It's one I think about often. Is council now with this bold step has done a lot for council's operations. I think through the ESCI committee, the ESCI committee now needs to consider what they want to do next on this front. Parks Council sponsored rooftop solar on the community's roofs. That was an incentive scheme where they basically asked for expressions of interest amongst their community on who would like solar, bulk purchased. ESCI is still coming to terms with what their next steps are this term. And we often talk about the community. You've got a solar farm coming on the outskirts of Orange. Really, I see up to ESCI to decide and council decide what they want to do for the community. All we've ever done for the community, and I think you've been part of it, is education.
Because I think that there is a great opportunity as a buying mechanism to start looking at, and I think that's the way it will go. That communities will start off managing their own, having more grids themselves, because they have the ability based on all of the solar power panels they've got here. It's just a matter of creating a storage point in the city to be able to then. But is that something that they're talking about? Is that what I
Is
get
the
from
joint
that?
organisation is looking at options with this new provider, Iberdrola. The JO in the sort of Cowra area is starting to look at, just because of the tyranny of distance and distribution, is looking at big batteries, having their own little grids. Certainly microgrids within council's operations is another thing we need to look at. You know, tying all of our buildings into little grids. There's so much more we can do. But the question is, how much more do you want to do as a council? And I think that's the role of ESCI is now to decide where to go. And I've said in the report that, you know, our emissions, if you're talking about greenhouse emissions, our waste facilities are producing at least half of our emissions. So ESCI needs to provide some guidance on whether you want to pay electricity or whether you want to pay greenhouse emission reductions. That's the next step for this council. But certainly this council is now, I think, way ahead of the game.
Councillor Mallard.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and yeah, congratulations to the CEO for negotiating this, and it's an incredible outcome, and agree with a lot of the comments Councillor Whitten just made. I know when the Sustainable Living Expo was on earlier in the year, Craig Rucastle was talking about the good work Darebin Council down in Victoria have done on solar share as well. I know I'd, in one of the community committees last year, in the last term of council, suggested that the Economic Development Community Committee might want to consider looking at what could be done in terms of council helping to arrange bulk solar arrangements for businesses in town as well. I think it's fantastic, but even before we get to the energy contract, I want to note the chart on page 71, which shows the excellent work that's been done by council staff in the last 3 years in the last few years, including the investment in rooftop solar installations in the budget and other efficiency measures, taking us from $4.5 million in energy costs down to around $3 million a year now. So that's a massive shift, and it's great that the new contract has that flexibility built into it. Because we are going to hopefully continue improving energy efficiency, so we'll see some reduction in load. Although also going back to the comments Councillor Miletto made about electric vehicle infrastructure, we do have some changes that will come in terms of increasing load as we move off gas and towards electricity, which we're going to have to do as part of climate action as well. And I wanted to note, it's 5 years basically since the council resolved to join the city's power partnership. I know during the last term on council, I was involved with the Environmental Sustainability Community Committee on developing the 5 pledges that council adopted. And one of those we've just about ticked off through this, that power council operations by renewable energy, and set targets to increase the level of renewable power for council operations over time. Well, we're heading to 100% now. So that's excellent. We can work on the other pledges, best practice energy efficiency we're already doing across council buildings, but supporting community facilities as well. Energy efficient lighting, I know the Southern Lights are delivering that. And the other key things now that the council have pledged to do, ensure new developments are designed to maximise public and active transport use and support electric vehicle uptake. And going to the community issue again, develop education and behaviour change programs to support local residents and businesses to tackle climate change through clean energy, energy efficiency and sustainable transport. So I think we've got these great areas. The CEO mentioned definitely the rest of our emissions. So, 100% renewable doesn't mean zero emissions. It's a long way from it. So we've got to do that work now to tackle the other areas like waste and like transport. And that community leadership is going to be crucial as well. Thanks.
I'll just make a quick comment. I'd like to congratulate the CEO. He was behind this negotiation, and it's we're moving forward where we should be moving forward, even though it's not the emission thing, but at least we're moving forward, and that'll put us in good stead ahead of most other councils of our population size. But I'd like to personally congratulate the CEO on that negotiations that you reached. So thank you. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Are you against it, Councillor Duff?
I was in favour of it. I thought it was
fantastic. I
fantastic.
didn't see you put your hand up. So you're for it?
I did. I was fairly quick.
That's good.
You got to look. You don't blink.
That's unanimous. It was unanimous, wasn't it, Councillor Duffy? Yeah, that's right. 5.7, which is the Lord's Place South Draft Concept Plan to go on exhibition. Moved by Councillor Mallard, seconded by Councillor Evans. Councillor Duffy.
I'm going to speak for it to go on exhibition, and that's about all. There's no way in the world when it comes back that I am going to support it. Number one, because we lose too many car spots. And that is one of the basic criteria. We're going to have dining decks and all these type of things, which is fantastic. And $1 million of this project is ours. We've got issues with parking. With the dining deck that's in Lord's Place has already taken out two car spots. I think I would probably support it if we get off the ground the OFA car park, deck car parking. I think I have no problem with that. But I do notice that if we go ahead with this, we'll start to disperse people from the CBD. I can tell you, I drive, and all the other bus drivers drive around this city all day, and it is coming cramped just with this little bit down here. The whole of the other streets, it'll get worse. And people will leave the city in the middle. I don't think that's the thing to do at this stage. If you somewhere else to park, their car parking, I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. And I do believe the CEO is doing some action on what we're actually trying to do here. But I just cannot support it when it comes back because we're losing just too many car parks.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. So Evans.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment actually, that being that Council be provided with a report on future traffic through the CBD as part of the Lord's Place design concept. If I can get a seconder, please.
Councillor McDonald.
So, Councillor Mallard.
These motions are going out to submission, right? So does that go into the submission? Or is that a
I
matter
might be able
arising?
to assist the councillor here. He come to the traffic committee and they're going to put a counter in there to monitor traffic flow and speeds and stuff like that.
That's happening anyway.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I just ask Councillor Evans to read what his amendment was?
That council will be provided with a report on future traffic flow in the CBD as part of the Lord's Place design concept.
I think Councillor Whitten's got a valid point of what the sequence is here.
Probably a matter arising after we deal with this.
Mr. Chair, we are 1, exhibiting.
Yep.
2, we're doing a specialist parking changes study.
And could we add that on as a number 3?
We are doing a traffic model analysis.
Back with the rest of the information.
Okay, so it's coming. So that's coming back. Okay, I think I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so that'll be a third one added. Do we need?
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. Point of clarification. If we don't get more information.
And that is.
I have some stuff hidden behind the door, and so no, we only going to
Won't be because it's going to be part of the motion.
Have all the information.
It's going to be part of the motion, Councillor Duff.
Well, let's have the information that goes out when it goes out.
We'll give you the final motion that we're voting on. Okay, thanks.
Well, let's read
Councillor
it out loud and
Kinghorn.
clear.
I'll speak to the amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Can I just let Councillor Kinghorn first, please? Yep, Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to put forward the option to defer this because I think that the parking situation and probably the traffic situation should be reported before it goes for exhibition. I mean, it looks like an option for a very pleasant space, but if I'm driving, I don't care about visual amenity. I just want to get where I'm going as efficiently as possible, and I'm also quite aware of how important parking is to businesses. So I think that needs to be thought first. So,
I'll second that deferral for discussion.
Can I just have everyone just give me a crack here? That's a shadow amendment, Councillor Kinghorn, and it's seconded by Councillor Duffy.
And then this one.
So you've already spoken it. Anyone else like to speak on the shadow amendment?
Should we deal with the amendment first?
We deal with the
Sorry,
amendment.
we'll deal with the amendment first, which is a traffic count. We've got that much going on here. Any other speakers for Councillor Evans?
I'll speak up, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Now, I support this project in principle like I've supported other future city projects before I came into this chamber. But the comment I've heard this time around is we need a bit more information. Lord's Place from Kite to Summer is a lot more highly concentrated with businesses and pedestrians. So we need to be careful with these future developments that we don't restrict and hinder pedestrian access altogether. Now, I appreciate the plan to alter car parking changes to Ophir and the surrounding car parks, but we also really need to consider where we're going to put those 23 vehicles that we're displacing during the busier parts of the day when you've got professional services trading alongside hospitality businesses. I went for a walk on Monday, and even on a pretty miserable orange day, most of the car parks around there are close to 90% full. We also need to consider how traffic is going to traverse and access Summer Street once we intentionally slow down Lord's Place. That's why I believe that a traffic flow report is going to help us make any further considerations when we look at this project in the future. But I am looking forward to putting this out on 14 days' notice, engaging with those businesses and the people that frequent that area. I could just finish up with a question as well, through Mr. Chair. Just wondering how flexible the plan is in terms of the dining decks. Depending on the hospitality business and how they're set up and what their capacity is, they may not want one. So if that's the case, if they don't want one, how flexible are we to replace that then with car spots?
I would, well, it's going out on exhibition, so I'd be pretty much sure that we can alter the plan as much as we want, correct? Hey, Mr. Redmond, would you like to speak about this? How flexible are businesses if they don't want a dining deck and it still have parking places in front of it? Or someone?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the plan we have tested with the community is the one that's before council tonight. We haven't gone into any fine detail with the businesses in the street about moving here or there. With that, we've just asked for their responses in relation to what's before the council tonight, and that's the nature of the engagement report that's in the.
Yep. Hang on. Councillor Whitten.
Mr Mayor, I'm speaking for the amendment. Yeah, look, the parking in Orange has been an issue for this council for 30 years, and it's something that we've tried to address over the years. And every time we do something in the CBD, whether it's a new retailer coming to the city, we've always discussed the fact about building a multi-storey car park in the Woolworths car park, in the Ophir car park. The reason we did the Ophir car park was because it was envisioned that it would ultimately be the place for a multi-storey car park. And I think reading this document, what really sticks out big time from all of the comments from most people is that they're happy with us to beautify the city for amenity purposes as long as we deal with the parking issue first, the parking issue for the city first. Because I had a retail shop, I had a business in Lord's Place for 12, 15 years. And that section of Lord Place, you cannot get a parking spot in there. The building that I had was like a gold mine because we had our own off-street parking out the back. No other building in that entire street has off-street parking, or office space, retail space, or restaurant space. And any of us and we all know, you go to Lord's Place any time during the day, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, even on Sunday afternoon, you can't get a parking spot there. So, because they're attending the restaurant. So really, for me, I'll be supporting the amendment and then I'll be supporting the deferral as a shadow amendment until we really debate the elephant in the room, which is parking in the CBD.
Thank you. I'll just have the CEO comment, please.
Should we just do a clarification on process? So you're debating an amendment to add number 3, Councillor Evans' amendment. You're debating that amendment. The Mayor will put the amendment shortly. If that amendment is successful, it becomes the motion. Then he will put that motion. That motion is then voted on as successful. The foreshadowed amendment lapses.
But if the motion...
But that's why we debate. We have a chance to debate the motion then. Once the amendment becomes the motion, we have to debate the motion.
Yeah.
We can vote against the motion then.
That's right.
Yeah, but if the motion is lost,
A bit of
we'll
clarification.
go to the foreshadowed if the motion is lost.
And we go through that in a little bit better because I want to support the deferral because I also want to support the parking. And as Councillor Whitten said, there's an elephant in the room. That's what I want to support. That's why I want a deferral. If it's going to make it lapse, fight against everything until it comes up to the deferral.
Okay, so let's go through the process. You're debating an amendment, which is to add number 3 to the current motion. You're debating that. The Mayor will shortly put that. That will see 3 items in the motion. If that amendment is successful, it becomes the motion. Then you vote on that motion.
No.
Yes, you do.
Come on.
Yes, you do.
Then the foreshadowed motion becomes the amendment.
No, it doesn't. The motion is then debated and voted on, and if the motion is lost, then you debate and vote on the foreshadowed amendment.
We're going to vote against the motion is what he said.
Correct.
Motion. No, that's
the process.
I disagree
in
with
the
them,
code
but
of
I'm
meeting
happy to do
practice.
that.
Happy to go through.
Going with the amendment. Councillor Evans' amendment. Any other speakers? Councillor Mallard.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'll speak in support of the amendment. I think it's good for us to get more information, and clearly the traffic issues are things that we've got to look very carefully at. I do want to say in terms of thinking about this, though, is that part of the principle of what we're trying to do with CBD revitalisation is to change the experience for traffic in the city as well. I mean, we can't shy away from that. The whole idea of it is to change expectations around urban design, to make streets more pedestrian friendly. And to do that, you need to change the way the experience of driving it happens as well. That in this case, by slowing speed limits down, by narrowing the roads in, so that the road doesn't feel as confronting to pedestrians and so that more of the space can be enjoyed. And it's about shifting things from the idea that the entire streetscape is the domain of big metal vehicles and that people are just supposed to stay over really close to the walls on the sides, and it's creating spaces that people can enjoy and spend time in. So, yeah, I think the traffic reporting and planning is really important, but I think for me, part of that is we're thinking about what's going to change and what are the right changes and what do we need to do to avoid problematic changes. So, for example, I've seen a lot of comments around the changes to Byng Street here just out the front of the council chambers and the roundabout. I've got to say my experience of it is driving, and I come across the railway line on Byng Street and then drive through into town quite regularly. I haven't felt like the flow of traffic has changed significantly at all in that change. So I think it's been one that's made this area more pedestrian friendly, but also it still hasn't had a major impact on traffic, and that's the sort of thing we're aiming for. Thanks.
Question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. Technically, the mover of the amendment could accept the shadow amendment as part of his amendment.
And that's where you might want to go.
I know I can't directly say that to him, but I can talk to you about it, right?
Yeah.
So Councillor Evans
and through you, Mr.
could
Chair,
accept the deferral.
he may be onto something.
Evans, will you accept that as part of your motion?
I have to decline.
Amendment.
I'm sorry, Councillor Whitten.
Okay.
Thank you.
I get the right to reply.
No. I'm
not debating you. I'm just asking you a question.
I want to speak against the amendment, and I want to raise the issue of Councillor Mallard that spoke about pedestrian safety. Go up to Sales Street. You see a pedestrian safety there that goes across lanes of traffic and even coming out of parking entrance and exits. I haven't seen anyone being close to being run over there, and they're going across 4 lanes of traffic. I think you're not cramming up the city. You are cramming up the city, because I travel this CBD and so do other people and taxi drivers, which we don't even have on any of our traffic committees. We travel it every day and we see where the hold-ups are. And we know what it is. We get stuck coming down Lord's Place this way. It'll be worse when you do that down there. I think you've got to understand, and that's why I'm supporting the deferral. We can go to the amendment because he won't take the deferral on board. Simple as that.
I'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment?
3.
7. Against? 5.
Kinghorn again.
So the amendment becomes the motion. Do I put the motion? We can't debate it again? No. Yeah, okay, I'll put the motion all in favour.
Clarification. If we vote the motion down, we get the deferral.
If you vote, through you, Mr. Chair, if you vote the motion down, then the foreshadowed amendment becomes, you need to vote on that, and that would then become the motion if successful, and then you vote on that.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to speak against the motion because the fact that we've added in a new amendment, which now cannot be advertised in this submission going to the public to talk about. They won't know what's we're going to do. A change to the amendment will be to do a traffic flow study, which won't be in this document for them to consider. So technically, for process, the paper it's out of order. It should be ruled out of order because for process it cannot go on public display because we've added something in here that is not part of this motion to go on public display. So it should be ruled out of order.
Councillor McDonald.
Go.
I just, through you, Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification too. So if this motion fails and the amendment becomes...
The foreshadowed amendment, you will then vote on that.
We then vote on that. Does that foreshadowed amendment include all the traffic studies?
No, at this stage it includes only deferral of the whole thing.
Right.
I presume for more information, Councillor Kinghorn. Would you like to clarify anything around your foreshadowed amendment, perhaps?
So with my foreshadowed amendment, I would be more than happy to include Councillor Evans's request for traffic studies.
I'm as a seconder, I'm quite happy to add that on there.
Well, I'll put
the motion gets up. will never be a shadow. So the paper's
voting
out of
against the
order. It
motion.
should be ruled out of order.
I agree, but
I'll put the motion.
We don't lose.
Can I have some clarity from the director?
Yeah, me too.
Perhaps Mr. Greenham can add some clarity to
referral.
our understanding of the issue.
Thank you, Councillor Mileto. What council, and we had a briefing around the design some weeks ago. I don't know whether I clarified it within the briefing, but the intent of this is a proof of concept. And so these dining decks and widening out and colouring out so that some of the existing parking is used for pedestrians or used for amenity along that street or for on-street dining. It's something that can be reversed. So if it doesn't work out as a trial basis, then in 12 months' time we can take those things out and we can return it to parking. So this is just about going to the community and getting some information. During that 2-week period, I'm quite certain that we'll be able to provide some information regarding the model and the traffic flows through there, both pre and post. But what we're designing is to support an existing motion that we have on council to go down to a 40 km/h speed limit through the CBD. So at the moment, with very wide streets, it doesn't support a 40k speed environment. And one of our previous councillors was involved in a T-bone intersection car accident where a car came through one of the lights and T-boned her. And touch wood, there was no serious injuries involved in that accident, but the vehicle was certainly damaged for some time. But we reduced down to a 40k speed limit. We can't do it without making some structural changes to the road network as well, so that it becomes self-regulating. It's not going to. We're not going to have policemen on every corner trying to book people as such. So it needs to be narrow roads.
Just let him finish.
And the concept
please.
needs to include certain elements similar to what we've got in here. But if the parking is the issue, these elements in 12 months' time, if they're not accepted or it's not generally accepted within the community and the business environment, then councillor can choose to pull those out. You may find that goes parking in the winter periods and in the summer periods when people want to utilise on-street dining, then they come back out and be reintroduced. And then as perhaps in winter, if people aren't utilising these facilities, perhaps they get returned parking. There's a number of scenarios that this design can take. I'd also like to remind councillors that we've had the Streets as Shared Spaces funding for a little while now. We do have some requirements to start spending on that thing. I don't want to change. Don't want to have poor decisions by rushing the community consultation, but I do feel what we're doing is a responsible way of moving forward. Thank you.
So Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now I want to take up a couple of points that the director mentioned, and one is the T-boning of a councillor. We've seen plenty of T-boning actions up here at Mart Street and the other street up here, and that's outside this
roundabout put in, and they didn't put the roundabout in.
There's nothing happened there, is there? And it's got nothing to do with speed or anything like that. But I also want to go back to the actual thing of funding. How much money have we sent back to the state or federal government? I don't care which one it is. How much money have we sent to them because we didn't want it? We don't need it, or we haven't met the time frame. How much money over the years have we done?
Never.
No government's going to walk around and take money off a council they've given to improve a city, irrespective of whether we agree with the way it went. But I just wanted to let you know this, councillors. We had a movement of motion, which I totally agree with Councillor Whitten. We had an amendment to a motion. The amendment won, it became the motion, and that should allow the foreshadowed amendment to come in to be debated And if we don't go down that pathway, I'm
Always
afraid I think we need to go a little bit further.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to read out the Code of Meeting Practice, word by word, if you
I
want me
want
to.
to go by the Act.
Yeah,
I'm going by this adopted Code of Meeting Practice.
Okay. Councillor Mallard.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to speak in support of the motion, and in doing so, I do want to agree that the decked parking issue is something we've got to work on and grapple with. That was part of the future city planning. Well, you know, and it's about shifting the expectations of what urban design looks like, so that yes, you may have to park and walk a bit further.
Okay.
For those with mobility issues, we need parking that accommodates that. I think I don't think the additional traffic reporting needs a deferral or needs to go out on the consultation. We're already in point 2 engaging to get more information, and to my mind, those bits of information are to inform us when we're thinking about the detail of the plan. But we should be going out doing
To inform
consultation
the people
now
who are going to write submissions, the public, the ratepayers who pay our wages, right?
Yeah, it's a process.
Councillor
It's a
Duffy,
process.
Councillor Whitten, Councillor Mallard's got the floor.
Experience.
Beg your pardon?
Your position.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I do want to thank the staff for the report on the initial consultation with businesses. I think it's captured that, yeah, clearly there's a range of views on this. We need to work through that carefully. Reading through it, the initial business feedback, like a couple of the key issues jumping out to me that we need to solve are short-term parking for things like takeaways, and hopefully the stuff in point 2 might bring us some options. I'm wondering if some short parking spaces right outside those sorts of areas that, you know, they could look at doing curbside takeaway service like a lot of larger businesses have started doing. That might be a shift in business practice. And then longer term parking for people who particularly need it for hour-long appointments, and particularly where they might have mobility limitations. I think we can go out and consult on the concept plan as it is. That detailed information will be coming back to us, and we'll be able to look at it and work through those details then. Thanks.
Okay, well, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
2, 3.
Against?
Rest.
Motion defeated. Then the shadow motion comes up now.
So now you need to vote that the foreshadowed amendment becomes the motion.
The foreshadowed amendment becomes the motion. All those in favour?
Clarification, Mr. Mayor, because I want to know, because I know Councillor Kinghorn wanted to add some details.
Yeah, do you want me to read it? Okay, I'll read it.
I want to read it, yes.
Would you like me to read it, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please. Who's
Okay.
chairing this?
Council.
Listening.
Councillors. The foreshadowed amendment, which you're about to make a motion and then vote on twice, would read, Councillor Kinghorn, indulge me, 1, that the Lord's Place South concept design project be deferred until such time as 2, that a specialist consultant be engaged to provide options to manage parking changes as written there, and 3, Council be provided with a report on future traffic flow in the CBD as part of the design concept, which was Councillor Evans's issue.
Councillor Kinghorn?
That's fine, except all I wanted to defer was it going on exhibition, because I think we need that information about the traffic and parking first. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to say this now, but the 23 parking spaces, we need to remember that they're 1 hour parking spaces, and if people do park there for 1 hour, then that's actually over 200 cars a day that are impacted by it. It's not just 23 cars, because they're used so often. So that sort of information matters. If we make them 15 minutes or whatever, it might solve the problem. But to put it on exhibition, people need to have that information to decide whether they think it's a good idea, rather than just with half. Like the look pretty part's fine, but the practicalities matter as well, and that needs to be put on exhibition too, and we can't do that without the data.
Councillor Miletto.
Point of clarification, if I could ask the director if if we support the shadowed amendment, will that affect funding in the future? Because I'm not hearing any time frame around how long we've given for this information to come back. And to Councillor Duffy's point, I do recall, and I may be incorrect here, but we did hand back, I think it was about 4.3 million or something with the overhead bridge at Peasley Street when that didn't go ahead. So that was money which was handed back from memory. 3 million or something.
So do I need to add a time frame to make that?
Look, Mr. Chair, Councillor Kinghorn, I'm not sure you can. I think we might ask Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm lost.
Maybe the director has to define the time frame for those studies to occur. Your motion, as read, allows everything to be deferred until that information comes back. We'll ask the director to define the possible time frame.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is ASAP. I do recognise that we have 3 weeks between now and the next council meeting, which means that I've got an extra week to prepare the reports. But that being said, it still may be a late report to the next council meeting to get that information back.
And is there any
funding issue?
The funding, is there what's the time?
Absolutely. There has been money that's been given back in the past, been demanded by federal government. And more recently, there's a significant one from state government that I'll report at the next council meeting.
So what's the time frame on this money? I suppose, Councillor Miletos, is there a time frame on this funding we have?
Yes, there is a time frame on this funding. It needs to be commenced this side of this side of Christmas. It certainly needs to be expended by early next year.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to speak for the amendment for the motion of Councillor Kinghorn, which I seconded. I think gladly common sense has prevailed.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, item 6, we move on into closed meeting. The Chief Executive Officer will advise the Council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by a closed meeting and by the Orange City Council.
Mr. Chair, we have no such submissions.
In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and the Local Government General Regulation 2005, opinion of the Chief Executive Officer, the following business is of kind referred in section 10A2 of the Act and should be dealt with the confidential session of the Council meeting closed to the press and public. The 2 items in closed meeting tonight, 6.1, lease to the Orange District Tenants Association. 6.2, works in kind agreement with MS Investments and Orange City Council are classified confidential under provision of section 10A2 of the Local Government Act 1993, which permits the meeting to be closed to the public for business relating to the following sections. C, information that would be disclosed confer a commercial advantage on a person in whom the council is conduction or proposes to conduct business. And can I have a move that we go on the close?
Second, Councillor Floyd and Councillor McDonald.
All in favour? Against? Carried.